Hey everybody, John Brown here again, and I'm here to review Tammany Hall, a potentially mean and cutthroat area control game, a game that's received almost mythical status after it was out of print for a while and it got built up, and I was able to pick up a copy. Interestingly enough, kind of the description might remind you quite a bit of El Grande, a game that I've heard rumors is coming back into print, but also a game that's been out of print for a long time and is considered to be one of the best area control games. Is Tammany Hall really that? Well, we'll definitely take a look at it. Now, it's kind of set in the gangs of New York era, where different groups and people and individuals were kind of fighting for political control and doing it through sometimes violent means. It's not a war game, it is more of an area control game. There's also quite a bit of bidding into it. But the theme of the game, of these ward bosses, manipulating people and pressuring them into voting a certain way, is definitely there. Can you imagine a society like that? Thankfully, we don't have that sort of violence in politics nowadays. Because of the Supreme Court, we can just have corporations pay large sums of money to make sure things go a certain way. So, yay. But that would make for a boring board game. Or maybe it wouldn't, but that's not the board game we're reviewing, so let's talk about Tammany Hall. One thing that's neat about the board is it tells you most of what you need to know about the game on the board itself. So if we take a quick look at the rulebook here, the rulebook is not very big. There are not a lot of pages to it, and it's relatively simple, and we'll see if that works well or not. So here's the board of Tammany Hall, and as you can see, it's brown, much like El Grande. Apparently all the early worker placement games got together and said, let's be brown. But basically, on a turn, at least for the first few rounds of the game, you're going to be taking these guys who I like to think of as little, I don't know, total biscuit meeples, little top-hatted guys almost, but these are actually your ward bosses. And while ward bosses do maybe bad things, they're out there to convince people to vote a certain way. So on your turn, you can do one of two things. You can place two different ward bosses down. You can place them in two different active sections, which are sections that have people on them, and these different colors represent people of different nationalities. You can place them in the same section or whatever, basically place two guys. Or you could place one guy, and then you could place one of these immigrant cubes out onto an active section. And if you do so, you'll get a favor token of the nationality that you put out. And well, so if I put a guy here, whatever, this is blue, and that represents the French, and I'll get a French favor token, so they appreciate that I put them out there. And then you'll see how those work eventually. And for the first 4 rounds of the game, and after those 4 rounds we'll have an election, they kind of represent 4 different years and then a term, we have an election, and that's pretty much all you do on your first turn. And well, that sounds kind of rubbish, doesn't it? However, the game kind of starts to get interesting here and then continues to get even more interesting after the end of the first round. So if someone has their ward boss in a section by themselves, they're going to simply win that place when the election happens. However, if multiple people have their ward bosses there, each one of their ward bosses count as 1 vote. And then players can put in their hands a certain number of favor tokens. It has to be a favor token, though, of people who are currently in that ward. So if there are no Irish people in that ward, I couldn't use that favor token. But if there are English people, I could use their favor token. And well, each player would put a certain number into their hands and then reveal it simultaneously. The thing is, it's all open information what tokens you have, so players know exactly how many you could bid. But what you bid is totally up to you, and you can bid 0 and potentially give up wards. And if there's a tie, nobody gets it. But if somebody does win a section, let's say the red uses enough tokens, they may end up winning. We'll remove the other people's ward bosses, and so we can see who won each section. If there's a tie, somebody goes away, and we'll count up and see whoever is the winner. Now, Tammany Hall here in the center is worth 2 points, so there is maybe a little bit more going after that or competition, and then the game gets really interesting, because whoever the winner is elected mayor. So while being mayor gets you 3 points, that is pretty great, although it's not all great, though. Because sure, 3 points is a lot of points in this game, but you have to hand out offices to all the other players. So there are 4 other offices, so in a 5-player game everyone will get one, and with less players the mayor can hand out one of these to each other player, and they give you powerful abilities. So for example, this player, and now going into the 5th round, and then we're going to have another 4 rounds, another election, but each time during those 4 rounds, a player can use this ability and move an immigrant to an adjacent ward, which will give you the potential to vote for that ward, and also give you potential bonuses in the end of an election. We'll see how that works here in a second. You can arrest someone, so you could potentially take out a citizen in the town and basically, because they don't suit your political purposes, arrest them for no reason, so potentially giving a player less opportunities to use favor tokens that they may have a lot of. As the deputy mayor, you can gain one political chip, basically a favor token from whichever faction you want each turn. Or as the council president, you can take one of the gray tokens included in the game, and there's two, and basically twice one time during each of the 4 years, you can lock up one of these sections. And if you do that, you'll place your gray token down, and no one can add or take away any ward bosses or anything. Basically, nobody can do anything to that section for the rest of that election cycle. Now, two other things to bear in mind is if you win this first section, you get to place an immigrant somewhere out on the board, potentially giving you a place where you could vote where you couldn't before, or possibly just giving you more people in an area that you are going to win. And these first two sections actually allow you to do that, and they trigger right away if you win the ward. And one of the reasons that's important is, I didn't want to show you this, but after the first election happens after 4 rounds, and after every election every 4 rounds, whoever has the most people in the areas they control of a certain nationality total is going to get 3 favor tokens from that faction. So that's actually a very important bonus. And also here in Section 4 and then in Section 7, you get a political favor chip for winning it. So these are slightly more valuable, allowing you to, have a little bit more room to add favor tokens into votes. And then again, the Tammany Hall section is worth 2, but all the other wards are the same. Now there's something else that can happen, not in the first 4 rounds, but for the rest of the game, you're going to have these 3 black chips, and they are slander tokens. So once during each election cycle after the first one, so in the rest of the 3, you can use one of these tokens. Well, how does that work? Well, basically, you are going to spread rumors about your opponent. So, thematically, if we are in this section here and I'm the brown player, I could spend a slander chip. I would also have to spend one of the English chips or I could spend a different type if there were other types of immigrants in there, and slander my opponent. So thematically, if I said nasty, terrible things about my opponent, say Brett, who likes to play the red player, basically the people will turn against him and kick one of his ward bosses out of that area. But more interestingly is slander likes to spread. So you notice that there is another English immigrant over in an adjacent section. I could spend another 2 influence to continue to spread that rumor and then remove him from that section. So with a total of 3 favor chips and one of my tokens, I've gotten rid of 2 of his ward bosses. Now, these are worth a point at the end of the game if I don't use them. So using them strategically and exactly at the right time is useful, not only because I want to score more points than I spent giving it up, but I also know now that Brett might have a vendetta against me. So this is also a game where you're allowed to make deals and table talk with people, although those deals aren't necessarily binding. So timing when you want to use the slander, even if you want to use the slander, is an important aspect of the game. So after the first 4 years, returns are really simple. They're a little bit more complicated because now you have your office abilities that you can use and potentially use slander token. And then we have an election, and we do this a total of 4 times, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Also, again, it's important to remember after each election you might get some more favor chips, and then there is some endgame scoring. Well, here we have a game where it's really steeped in the theme. And I'm going to get right off the bat one of the things I absolutely love about this game. My favorite theme of all time may be Euphoria. It reminds me of the Ayn Rand short story, Anthem, and this dystopian future where we want our workers to be dumb. However, this may be my favorite game when it comes to the mechanisms matching with the theme. So we have the appointed officials who use their powers basically to hurt other people to be get advantageous position for themselves, and the elected officials who sit back and do absolutely nothing except gain power in the way of points and in the game. All of those are very thematic in what they do, and especially the slander tokens, how I'm going to spread this rumor, so if I'm in good with this nationality, I'm going to spread this rumor about somebody, and then that gossip will spread if I spend enough of the favor and there are people adjacent who can spread that rumor. I just think that's brilliant. So, and there's a lot of great moments with the game too, with the bidding that, okay, I have one more than you, and I know I can win. Let's say if I spend these 2 tokens, I know I can win. But you have 4 tokens and you can win, but I have more than 2, so am I going to spend enough to make sure? Am I going to, however it's going to work, am I going to make you spend, or are you going to spend the ones you have knowing you might lose in order to force me to bid? I mean, all those Vincini moments where I know that you know. So this is a game where the kind of bidding element is something I really like. It's very tactical, but also strategic, because here's the thing. I've seen games where people go after Tammany Hall because it's worth 2 points and throw so much in there, and I say, go ahead, I'm going to take 2 other wards with the guys I could have spent, the effort I could have spent trying to win that, and wards that maybe even have more people in it, which will give me potentially bigger favor bonuses and things like that. So the strategy of where to go win, are you going to play strategically? Are you going to take a vendetta against someone? You can make deals. You can say, hey, this guy's in the lead, we got to gang up on him. You can, as a mayor, give one of the more powerful abilities. Let's say you're not playing a 5-player game, but give one of the abilities maybe to lock up a ward to somebody and just let them get some points. Or give them an ability, because the hopes is that I'm going to let this person who's behind have something powerful, because it's going to affect the other players as much as it affects me. So all of that, there's a lot of short-term strategy and long-term strategy in the game. Obviously, this is a game I like. As you know, if you've watched all my videos, or at least my El Grande video, that for a long time has been my favorite game, and this game made me question that. I'm not saying this is my favorite game, it's not, but there are things about this game I like better. I like how the mechanisms match the theme. So who's not going to like this? Well, if you don't like games that are mean, if you don't like that cutthroatness, there's not as much straight up meanness as El Grande. You're not sending all of the caballeros back to the provinces I've been building up for all these turns, but that slander token can just mean so much, or that fighting over certain sections when it seemed the player's saying, but it's more advantageous for you to go there. Those moments, there's still a lot of that competition. So if you don't like that rough competition, you're not going to like this game. If you don't like other area control games, you're probably not going to like this game. But if you have a group that likes to be competitive, likes to talk, and for me, the negotiation aspect hasn't really come into it much in the times that I've played it, but it could with the right group, and even without that, it's something I enjoy. So basically, if you have a group that you like to play peaceably, you don't like to have these moments where it's not a take that game, but there's still a lot of direct competition with their players, then much like any other area control game, this may not be for you. And much like other area control games, it doesn't play its best at 3. It's better with 4 or 5. However, I have played it at 3 more than once, and I still like it. Of course, I still like El Grande at 3, and most people don't, so take that with a grain of salt. Again, that is also better with 4 and 5, but if you have maybe a 3-player group and that's all you tend to have, this may not be the best game either. But if you like that competition in your group, then this is a game that has not only the same level of competition as some other area control games, but I personally feel like mechanisms that tie in with the theme extremely well, and that's what makes it really enjoyable for me. And if you like that sort of competition, it might make it very enjoyable for you and your game group. And if you don't, stay away. It was a nasty time and it's a nasty game, and if that's not for you, then this game isn't for you. But if it is, this is, just a brilliant meshing of what you can do and how the game works, and I really appreciate it for that.